Hey guys, I am here with Laura Grier, who is a super amazing, awesome, blow your mind travel destination wedding photographer. And I'm interviewing her today because I think you have the coolest job of everyone I know, and I know some really cool people. So I want the people out there who are dreaming of doing what you do to know how.
Okay, I'm going to try to kind of break it up because I've actually talked about this subject a lot, and I could sit here and tell you a million stories about my childhood, but there were kind of like 5 pivotal moments in my life that I think have helped shape my career and where I'm at. And the first one was a conversation I had with my mom when I was 13. And basically I'd always wanted to be a zoologist like my whole life and study animals and be like this adventurer. And my mom was like, I don't really see you being in a laboratory or being a scientist. You're like way too social.
So much.
But she was like, this is, you know, like why don't we find your strengths and your weaknesses and like build the perfect career around that. Like you're never gonna get up early, you're never gonna sit at a desk job, you get bored too easily, you wanna travel, you wanna adventure, like what job could we create that would like get all these things that you want? And I thought that was like such a cool, I didn't think my mom like realized how much that conversation affected me, but it did.
Yeah.
And so later on in life, I went to school for 4 years for photography in upstate New York at Syracuse, and then I decided to pack up everything I owned in my car and drive out west to LA, and like had to sell my violin for gas money to make it to Los Angeles, and like had like no plan. I just knew I had
obviously like you didn't even know how much money it cost to buy gas to get to LA.
No money.
Like, you're just like, I'm doing it, I'm hawking the violin.
Yeah, no, and it didn't get me that far. It got me to Los Angeles. And
I was like, how much can you sell a violin for?
I mean, like it was just funny. I had no home, no like job waiting for me, and I remember like having that, oh my god, like what am I doing moment when I finally got to Los Angeles. And I bartended for a year. I set myself like a year kind of time limit to do it.
Very smart.
And I knew that I had a photography degree, but it was like I had to earn money. I was living out of my car. I was, you know, all this stuff. I had a couple really fun at my LA story breaks when I was bartending. One of my first customers I met was the executive producer of a reality show called Love Cruise, and I got recruited to be on a pirate ship in the Caribbean with 8 single girls and 8 single guys.
Did you have to walk the plank?
I had to walk the plank.
Oh.
I didn't get voted off.
I don't even remember that. If you got voted off, you had to.
It was called Love Cruise. It was on Fox. It was like we were like the pioneer reality show people.
Congratulations.
But no, yeah, I don't know if my parents would say congratulations.
Right.
They were watching it. They're like, well, what were you thinking?
Right.
But
so minor detour from photography.
But kind of helped me though. I mean, I earned like $5,000 and I was able to get my first apartment, and then I was still bartending, and then I met the executive producer of Wheel of Fortune bartending, and he invited me to be on the show, and I ended up winning like $7,000 and buying my first camera, and that was how I was able, my first digital camera, and I was able to kind of like slowly but surely in a weird LA fashion like get my feet, you know, like moving and off the ground and everything.
And I will say this, because I think when people are like, well, how did you get the money to start? I think that's always, there's never an answer. Like you just, when you're young, you just have to be hungry.
Yeah, you hustle.
And like if you have to go into the Wheel of Fortune and try and make some money, like that's what you do.
I mean, I did, like I lived off credit cards. I mean, not in a horrible way, but
be careful.
In the beginning, I know, in the beginning though, like I had to start somewhere. I had to buy the equipment. It's kind of like the catch-22. Like you need the equipment in order to shoot the job. Like you can get the job, but if you don't have the equipment, you know. So I had to kind of just, on good faith, buy all the equipment on credit cards, and then I was able to pay it back pretty quickly.
Well, I will say there's a difference in getting credit card debt and making an investment in yourself.
Yeah.
Because by the way, like if you're gonna spend $7,000 of your own money that you don't even have yet, like you better like bust your butt to make that money, because
it's true. And I mean, but I knew that, you know, either through bartending or whatever, that I was able to like earn some money and pay that off. But you know, once I started shooting jobs, it paid it off really quickly, because like once you buy that initial investment of equipment, like you're using that equipment for years and years and years. Like you don't really have to like keep buying it. You know, you can add to it later. But it was a great investment. And I think like the next pivotal conversation I had was when I started my own business. So I had after bartending, I had walked into a headshot photography studio in Hollywood, and I'm like, I don't care what I do for you. I want to be a photographer. Like you have to hire me. I'll do anything. I'll answer phones in your studio, whatever.
And I will say, so many people I know who are successful have a story like that, where they're like, I just walked somewhere and knocked on the door, because you know what? There's people emailing resumes or calling in, blah, blah, but if you like walk in a door, that says a lot and says like, nope, I need a job.
That's true. And you have to also remember, like, this is like pre-cell phone and pre-social media, like where you actually had to like meet with people face to face. And it was awesome. Like, they were like, okay, well, how are you? And, you know, I did everything. Like, I worked there for 3 years. I learned how to run a small business. I learned how to meet with clients. I learned how to, you know, I was assisting with shooting. That was how I started getting into wedding photography. They, you know, I helped them start their wedding photography business. And it was such like an invaluable experience because I got to learn by somebody else's mistakes in running their business, like the things that were working for them, the things that weren't, where they're getting their leads from, like how they market themselves, you know, how to like put in orders at the lab, like all the things that they don't teach you in school. Like, they teach you how to take great photos at school. Right. They don't teach you how to like run a business or how to be a good business person. Yeah, and they don't teach you how to answer the phones or how to be a sociable person, how to sell yourself.
Well, I think people need to realize too, like assisting, it's like a modern day like apprenticeship program. For me as a wardrobe stylist, like you have to apprentice with someone and learn everything that goes around it. And I feel like I see some people who kind of like turn their nose down at that, and I'm like, no, that's the real school. That's real life.
That is. And I think like for anyone who's wanting to get into any type of photography or any type of, you know, you are a photographer but you want to like test out a new field in photography, like apprenticing or shadowing, they call it, like another photographer, is like invaluable. I mean, there's so much. And so
normally you make like $8 an hour or like $100 a day. Yeah, not a lot, but no, that was worth it.
That was what I was making. I went from bartending making like $2,000 a week to making $8 an hour. And again, an investment in yourself. It was like getting my master's. You know? And then after that, I finally felt like I had the confidence to start my own business. I've always was influenced by David LaChapelle. He's like one of my favorite photographers of all time.
Makes total sense.
He's like total like conceptual artist, like very colorful, really saturated colors. And when digital hit, I was able to like push the envelope with my photography and make my images look more saturated like that. And I finally was able to like develop a style, you know, like I didn't have something that differentiated me from other people until digital hit. Right. And I think that's really important for anyone who's starting their business. Like, people think it's scary to start their business, but what it is it's actually very exciting because you can reinvent yourself as anything that you want to be. And I was able to be like, okay, I'm this like young female really shooting like oversaturated fun images. I bring like a youth and freshness to like the wedding industry. You know, I was able to kind of like create from scratch like the persona that I wanted to be.
Well, and I feel like people don't realize the value of their unique voice, meaning you are going to take photographers like you are. Like, if you're trying to imitate someone else, you're never going to do it as well as that other person. So you might as well uncover what makes you you.
Yeah, it was kind of like when Instagram got really huge a few years ago. Everyone wanted to do these super vintage weddings, like mason jars and like in a barn but with a chandelier, like vintage chic or whatever. And all these kind of like faded looking photos were coming in style, and I was like, oh my god, here I am again. Like, I'm a dinosaur already again. There's a woman, Harmony Walton, who owns the bridal bar, and she's been kind of like a mentor for me. And I had this conversation, like, what do? Do I just start throwing filters on my photos and making them look all vintage? And she was like, no. She's like, let everybody else do that. And then you're going to stand out being like the colorful, saturated one. Like, you need to own your own style because trends come and go, but you own your own style. And being consistent is really, really important because people will just know you for that and they will hire you for that. So like, you know, coordinators will hire you for your style, and hotels and clients, and when a client refers you, like, they know you for a certain style. They don't want to be like, am I going to get vintage Laura today, or am I going to get like saturated Laura today? Like,
I actually don't know anyone else that does saturation like you do, and I think that's amazing because then if whatever I ever hear someone who wants that or wants someone who's going to go scuba diving and take their wedding photographs underwater, I'm like, you got Laura. Like one person. But if someone said another style, like the vintage thing, like I could think of 3 or 4 off the top of my head, and that's powerful.
No, and it's funny because like you have to kind of pick like a focus, and we were talking about that earlier, but you want to pick like a focus or something that you're going to be known for. And I think when you start a business, like a lot of people want to be like, I do it all, but it's actually not helping you out. Like, you want to be like, I am a travel destination adventure photographer. This is how I shoot colorful imagery, like because if you are just showing that you do everything, people are gonna be like, well, like, what are you good at? Like, what's your favorite thing to do? So I always kept my wedding work very separate from the rest of my work. Like, I have my own website for that. Anything travel related or like fashion related, I always kept separately. And all those types of work influence each other. But like, people that are hiring you want to think that you like literally that's all you do is you live and breathe wedding photography.
Okay, so let's talk about that real quick. So like let's pretend like I'm in my 20s and I'm in Texas and I want to be a photographer. I am a photographer. I've done some things and I want to be a destination wedding photographer.
Okay.
How do I say like I think that's a hard thing as an artist because you feel like I can do it, but someone has to hire me so I can show you I can do it. Like, do you do test photo shoots? Do you
sort of? I mean, I
ask a friend who you know is getting married in Mexico?
Yeah, totally. I mean, in my 20s, two of my sisters live in Europe, and I took full advantage of that. Like, I basically would hear about their friends getting married and be like, fly me over there, I'll shoot it for free. Like, I just need to get, it's hard to book destination weddings unless you have work to show from there. So if I would fund my own trips and just offer to shoot things for free in the very beginning. And then I would meet people at those weddings or people that saw my work from there, and then they would hire me. And like, but nobody knows when you're shooting those things for free that you're doing it for free. People would just think like, oh my God, someone flew her out to France to like do this wedding. And so that goes to my point of, it's not like, I know people say fake it till you make it, but it's not faking it. It's like, the way you put yourself out there is the way you're going to be perceived. So the energy you put out is what comes back to you. So if you say, I am a destination travel photographer and here's my work, like nobody needs to know that you put on your credit card that trip and that you shot it for free. They're just going to see your beautiful work and they're going to see that you talk about yourself as a travel destination photographer, and like that is how you're going to be perceived out there. So like the way you put yourself out there on social media and just brand yourself in general is really important. It's like the words you use to describe yourself is really important because those are going to be the words that whoever shares your post on Facebook or whoever meets you and then talks about you to the next person, they're going to use those same words to describe you. Like, oh my God, I met this amazing destination.
It's like your tagline.
Totally.
Like, we are a brand. You are a brand. You're like McDonald's or Walmart. You're just a party of one. But I think most freelancers forget about that sometimes, that like you have to, like if I go to McDonald's, I know exactly what I'm getting. And if I'm going to you as a photographer, and this is why I really wanted to interview you, because I feel like I know exactly what I'm going to get with you.
And that's really important. So like the whole consistency, going back to that vintage thing, when I was like freaking out I should do vintage, Harmony came up with this amazing idea for me to do a vintage shoot, but with my own style, like a super hyper color vintage shoot. And it ended up being published in this magazine, and everyone was like so excited about it. And it was cool because it was like, yeah, I can shoot vintage. I'm just gonna shoot it my way. You know? And that gave me a lot of confidence moving forward to be like, yeah, no, I'm gonna like own my style, and this is who I am, and this is how I'm gonna talk about myself. And I feel like things really snowballed from there.
I feel like you get rewarded. When you stay authentic to who you are.
I think so too. And I feel like everybody, no matter how, and okay, this goes for everybody out there that wants to hear this. I go to these destination branding conferences every year, and we're talking people that have like their own reality shows, their own TV shows, their books. They're like, they got a brand at like Target or whatever.
Right.
All of them have these, what am I doing in my career? Oh shit moments. Like they all do. They have these moments where they're like, well, I've done all this, like what's next? Like, and it's really funny to hear that because you just think these people that are like up there, like just have got it all figured out.
Totally.
And they don't. Like they all have the same, like if you're not constantly evolving, thinking about how you can evolve, wondering like, could I do this better? Or, like, what could I do differently? Then you're like not ever gonna grow. You're just gonna stay stagnant. And no matter how successful you are, you're like constantly having those conversations with yourself. Like, oh my God, am I a dinosaur? Oh my God, what's like,
absolutely.
And, and it's really healthy. It's scary, but it's like healthy to have those moments because it'll make you like think outside the box and do something differently, And I
think there's, one of these quotes going around, and it's like, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 20, because I have a bad habit sometimes of seeing someone, I'm like, well, she's so amazing, why do I need to do it? Because this person already exists and they're doing it so well. And it's like, well, one, they have a different voice than me, and two, they have to go through chapters 1 through 19 to get to that point. So it's like, don't talk yourself out of it before you even have started. I feel like some people will say, well, I can't be a travel destination photographer, I live in Des Moines, Iowa, or wherever.
That's like not true. I live in Los Angeles. I'm not here a lot. Like you're not traveling. Like it doesn't matter. Like you're gonna travel from somewhere if you're a destination photographer. So where you live doesn't matter. But no, it's funny. One of my not mentors, like a person in the industry that I look up to, her name's Elizabeth Messina. Very different style than me. She's like very romantic, like ethereal, her work, but she charges like $25,000 to shoot a wedding. She's like up there.
Right.
And I ran into her at an event, and I was like, all nervous, like, oh my gosh, what can I say to her? And I just went up to her and was like, how do I get to be you? Like, how do you get to that point? And she just looked at me and she's like, you are me, you're just me 10 years ago. And I was like, that's like the coolest thing she could have said to me, because she was basically like, you're doing everything right. Yeah. I've just been doing it longer than you, you know?
I mean, like, there's just time.
Yeah, it really is. And so, you know, every time you feel like you haven't grown, look back like a couple years and be like, oh my God, I've done so much since then. I'm so different. Even my work, like, from last year to this year, I feel like evolves. And it's, you know, people are just very hard, like, you're hard on yourself when you're starting a business, but there is like a process. You can't just like warp speed skip through all the, like, the chapters, as you say. So for me, like, if I could go back to my younger self and talk to myself, I'd be like, okay, you're doing everything right. I could give you a few tips to make things happen a little faster, or make you not doubt yourself as much, because I think that's the hardest thing.
That's the biggest thing.
Is doubting yourself. You're like, oh my God, like, I'm not good enough, or I'm not this. Like, that's the part where I'm like, God, I wish I could have gone back and just told myself, like, no, you're like rocking it out. You're doing just fine.
I think it's like the book of someone's life, at the end of like every chapter, it would say, and Laura has a panic attack. and then chapter 2 starts. Because it's like, as you grow and get to these next levels, you get there and then you find the level of success at that level, and then you're like, oh my God, but I'm not there, and how am I ever going to get there? And then chapter 3 starts. Because it's the day that pushes you forward.
Totally. You know? The day that I've said I've gotten there is like the day I'm going to hit by a truck or something. But I think like the way, going back to like, you know, the way you put yourself out there and the energy you put into something is super important. And you also talked about focusing on something. Like, you could be scattered and focus, you know, 10 different areas, and you're not going to quite get there as fast as you focus on one, you know? And
basically, like, if you take one step in 10 directions, you're slightly moving, but if you're 10 steps in one direction, then you see progress quicker. And it feels good, because that gives you a rush to take your next 10 steps, because you need to see reward for what you're putting into it.
And it doesn't mean that you can't do other things.
No,
it just means that you're like putting a little more focus on one. And I think I try to tell photographers that, like, when they're like, I love photography, I want to be a photographer, I'm like, what kind? Like, what do you like to shoot? Like, let's like focus in here, because there's so many.
Even if it evolves to other things, start with one.
Yeah.
So that's your advice to, like, when photographers come up and they're like, what, like, that's just a great.
My main advice would be like, okay, start doing the things that you can do that are free, right?
Exactly.
You can, well, like $10 buy a domain name, but whatever. Buy a domain name, start a blog, or start your website. That most of those, like through WordPress or whatever, can be free. You can make business cards. You can start just shooting stuff and building a body of work. You can create your 20-second elevator speech, which is like how you're going to describe yourself as a photographer. What's your style? Like, you know, just start putting yourself out there like that. And I feel like there's so many things you can do to start prepping yourself as a photographer that really don't cost a lot of money.
Right.
And you can start building like a following and a name and like web traffic and just getting people to share what you're doing. And I mean, I always say, like, thinking about what your branding is going to be is really important, because for me, I didn't think about branding myself as a brand until I was like 10 years into my business, or maybe 9 years. Like, it didn't even occur to me that I was a brand, you know? So I think it's kind of hard to rebrand yourself once you've been doing something for 10 years. You're like, now I have to like, but when you're starting out fresh, you're almost at an advantage, because you're like free to create yourself any way that you want to.
Absolutely.
So it's not like as scary. It's almost like refreshing. You don't have to like undo 10 years of stuff to like rebrand yourself, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So, for me, like, I always become really good friends with a lot of my clients, and I think like my style speaks to people. It speaks to people that are adventurous and fun and want to be doing the things that I'm doing in travel. And so it's no surprise that I end up becoming friends with these people, because like I'm putting out the vibe through my style, like the type of person I am, and the style I like to shoot. So, you know, for me, it's like I'm putting out there what I want to attract, and I'm attracting a certain type of client. And I think like that's really important. Like in the beginning, I was just like, I need to get as much business as possible. I'm just gonna like reach out and like shoot anything and everything. And I didn't think about like really honing in on the type of client I wanted and the type of style that I want to be doing. And I think that, you know, now it's refreshing. It's like, I know that the people I'm gonna shoot like get me and they want me for my style, and I'm not gonna get some bridezilla that like doesn't understand my aesthetic, you know?
Which I do think in the beginning it's a little bit of a mix, because same thing with me, like you kind of do have to hustle when you're starting out. You're like, what? I could do this? Yes, yes, yes. Like I said yes to everything. But then once you have a good body, you have to then start Totally.
Yeah,
it's kind of a balance,
It
right?
is a balance. I mean, you do have to like take jobs that you may not ordinarily want to do, or take them for less money in the beginning. But I definitely think that you can really just put out there what you want to attract. Like you can really only put the work out there. Like you could shoot like jobs that you're not making, like you don't love, but don't put it on your blog, or like don't like advertise that you do those, or else you're gonna get people that want you to do those, and you're like, oh, I keep getting these jobs, like, you know. So just only put out there like what you want to attract. And I think had I known that starting, that would have maybe helped things move a little faster.
Yeah.
But also going back to like the feeling low confidence, like I would meet with a couple and like have a great coffee meeting with them, and then they wouldn't hire me, and later on I would find out
you're like, why?
They like me, and it was really just like a style thing. They're like, well, we ended up vibing with this other photographer's style, and I finally had to like let go of that like taking it personally thing, and being like, okay, you know, I can only put myself out there, and if they vibe with me, great. If they don't, they don't. And there's plenty of work to go around. There's plenty of photographers, and I had to like just be like, okay, well then they're not my client. Because if they don't like absolutely love me and they want to like move heaven and earth to have me as their photographer, then they're not my client. And that was, it took me a lot of years to like not take that personally.
Totally. It's still rejection. Like you just
it's
like
rejection.
Yeah. It never feels good. Okay, so that was awesome.
Do you think we recapped it? We got sound on this one?
And we've got sound. This was awesome. If you guys have questions for Laura, leave them below, or email me or email her, and who knows, maybe we'll do another video, or we'll try and get back to you. And
I also have a lot of videos on my website, lauragrier.com, about like how to start your destination photography business, or how to brand yourself, or how I use color to brand myself. And so if you're interested, you can click on any of those videos.
Yeah, exactly. We're here to help you. So let us know. Bye, guys.